Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Tsunami waves from a massive 8.8 earthquake off Russia's coast have reached Hawaii and California. Japan evacuated 1.9 million people, but the evacuation order from Hawaii was lifted after the alert was downgraded. Japan also downgraded alerts for most of the country except for northern regions. Families of Israeli hostages in Gaza have condemned the UK's plan to recognise a Palestinian state, calling it a validation of terrorism. The move comes as a UN-backed food security body warns of famine in Gaza, despite aid lorries crossing into the region. US and Chinese officials have agreed to seek an extension of their 90-day tariff truce 2 days after the constructive talks in Stockholm. Both sides aim to defuse the escalating trade war that threatens global growth. Thailand has accused Cambodian forces of violating a ceasefire agreement at 3 locations along the disputed border. The allegations come just days after both countries agreed to a ceasefire to end the deadliest conflict in over a decade. South Korea and the United States are discussing trade issues including chips, batteries and biotech ahead of the August 1st tariff deadline. South Korean Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul met with US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to further negotiate the deal. Shanghai has evacuated 283,000 people from coastal and low-lying areas as Typhoon Komei approaches, bringing heavy rains and strong winds. Flight cancellations have been reported amid the storm. The Trump administration has urged judges to release testimony heard by grand juries that indicted Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell on sex trafficking charges. The Justice Department seeks court approval to make the confidential transcripts public. President Donald Trump said India could face up to 25% tariffs if a trade deal is not reached by August 1st. US-India trade negotiations have been underway, with officials expressing both optimism and caution. Now, in the latest developments, waves up to 4 meters are forecast to hit the Marquise Island in French Polynesia overnight. The islands of Nuku Hiva, Haku and Hiva Oa are on alert, with impacts expected from 1 a.m. local time. Meanwhile, tsunami alerts are expanding across the Pacific after a massive 8.8 magnitude quake struck off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. Russia's Severokursk waves swept through coastal areas, flooding a fishing plant and forcing a full evacuation. Authorities have then declared a state of emergency. Meanwhile, Japan's meteorological agency has downgraded tsunami alerts for several areas. In Hawaii, Governor Josh Green reports that no significant wave has passed the Big Island, but harbors remain shut and flights to Maui are cancelled. The tsunami has now reached the US west coast, with 1.6-foot waves recorded in California's Arena Cove. We are now joined by our guest, Professor Vibhuti Rai, who's the Dean of Faculty of Science, joining us from Lucknow University. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Rai.
Thank you.
Pleasure. What is the significance of this quake, considering the aftershocks, the after effects of it have been felt so far away? Should people still be worried? We've seen now the downgrade of that state of emergency down they've put it down, also in regions of Japan as well. Some people in Hawaii are saying that this disaster that they expected to happen hasn't. Should people still be worried?
Well, it's one of the highest magnitude earthquakes in the recent times. This particular area, the Kamchatka, this area is extreme eastern part of Russia, and is very close to Aleutian Islands, and is actually part of the ring of fire that we call surrounding the Pacific plate. This particular magnitude in an area which is almost very close to the ocean actually triggered the large scale tsunamis. And that's why all across the Pacific we are seeing the impact of it. And as I have read in the news recently, a few hours ago, very high alert has been put across, especially in the Hawaiian Islands, also in the west coast of USA, Canada, and also in Japan, especially north of Japan, in South China Sea. All these areas are actually covered by the impact of the tsunamis. So as far as the impact is, the main reason for this earthquake is basically the Pacific plate, which is actually hitting the Asian or Eurasian plate, as we call it. And that's how this is an area where large-scale earthquakes have happened in the past too. The last big earthquake hit it about 14 years ago. So there's nothing unusual, but as I understand, most of the countries surrounding the Pacific region is having early warning system, and necessary measures have been taken for evacuation of people near the coastal areas.
Professor Rai, obviously this is now hours after the initial earthquake has happened. Given the significant amount of earthquakes in the past, how long will people be bracing for aftershocks? How long will places still be reeling from this initial earthquake that happened hours ago now?
It's almost 12 hours, as I understand. The tsunamis actually they trigger from one point, but then there's a consistency as long as almost 12 to 24 hours. The impact can be because the waves are traveling in the water, and any area which is having deeper ocean near the coast have much higher impact because the amplitude of these tsunami waves is very high. So many of these regions are actually, they should have the warnings, especially in the island areas. It's, I think next 12 hours are also going to be crucial because this is not a usual earthquake. I mean, this earthquake is just, it triggered from the margin of the ocean. So its impact is going, and I'd say 8.8 is one of the highest in recent years. So the last I remember was about 8 from Kathmandu a few years ago. And there also, since it was in the land, the impact was mainly on the land areas. But here the tsunamis may continue for a few more hours. That's what I understand.
Professor Rai, how well prepared are countries, islands like Hawaii, in terms of tsunami early warning systems and also defenses as well?
Well, there's all across the Pacific, there's a network of earthquake-related laboratories, and the seismographs, they are installed all across. So within a few minutes of the earthquakes, almost all the countries which are in the region, they get the information, I think within 5 minutes or so, and how big the earthquake is, that is also flashed out. So there was enough of time, I believe, for the coastal areas, especially to get the warning. And I think Japan and Hawaiian Islands, they have this kind of, some earthquakes. They are usually taking place because there's a Mariana Trench very close to east coast of Japan, the highest, deepest point on Earth, the Challenger Deep. And in the entire area, the earthquakes are quite a common feature. But certainly it's a matter of concern for all the authorities to ensure that there's minimum effect on the life and property of people. And I think this early warning system is quite at place, and it's going to be effective. And I think there would not be much of casualties, as I understand.
Professor Rai, thank you very much for your insight and joining us on the programme. We now move on. China's Ministry of Commerce, in a statement on Wednesday, urged the US to meet China halfway in ongoing trade talks. Commerce Minister Wang Wentiao, speaking to a US business delegation, emphasized that China and the US remain key economic partners, with both sides engaging in constructive dialogues on mutual trade issues. Wang stressed that decoupling would not work and that resolving differences through dialogue on an equal footing was essential. He also welcomed US investment in China and reaffirmed China's commitment to a stable and healthy economic relationship. Following recent trade discussions in Stockholm, both countries agreed to extend a 90-day tariff truce with plans to further de-escalate. China Vice Premier He Lifeng reiterated that stable trade relations benefit not only China and the US, but also global economic stability. Experts highlight that the continued dialogue between the world's two largest economies helps reduce uncertainty in global markets. Both sides have committed to further communication to ensure the stable development of bilateral trade. We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao to discuss this further. He joins us live from Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us. Who has more leverage in these talks? China has said in its statement for the US to meet it halfway. What does this say about the US's negotiating tactics?
We need to focusing on this is temporal extension of the deadline. So 90 days deadline and extend 90 deadline. So this is not the solving completely. So that's why temporary, why they need to extend the deadline is a point we should analysis. In the long-term process, of course, the US-China trade war or the Cold War is ongoing, and it is the direction is escalating. But currently, Trump administration need to talk with many other countries as a tariff negotiation. So during that time, Trump administration cannot focusing on only China. This means that Trump administration needs time. China do not need. So view from this, who takes the initiative? In this case, of course, Trump administration. Trump administration raised the tariff against China. After that, they extend the deadline and extend again and to buy time. This means that everything is decided by Trump side. So that's why what is happening is because United States needs time, United States extend the deadline. That is my analysis.
Yes, and obviously these are two countries with leverage. Donald Trump sees China as a threat. How do you see these talks moving forward for both sides? Obviously, we've seen a truce extended further for 90 days. How long can you see this dragging on for?
When we check the history of the last 249 years of the history of the United States, U.S. hasn't allowed any rivals to survive, including Germany, Japan, the Soviet Union. So now China is a rival for the United States. So there is a high possibility that U.S. strategy is one shall stand, one shall fall, and stand is United States, and fall is China. So that's why in the long-term strategy, the U.S. will defeat China. That is the purpose. But as a practical policy, it is not easy to decouple just now. So that's why they need to continue to trade. In this case, what is the method? For example, the supply line of the rare earth is needed for the United States. In this case, China exploits this dominant situation of the rare earth to negotiate with the United States. So that's why U.S. need to extend the deadline and carefully manage the negotiation. And even if the long-term strategy is decoupled with China, but just now it is impossible. So gradually declining the situation rely on China. So that is a long-term process for the United States. So what is the goal? Yes, currently just the middle of this process. So still the US and China continue to trade, but US will not rely on China so deeply. That is the process, I think.
Yes, Dr. Satoru Nagao, thank you. You are staying with us for further discussions. We move on now at a UN conference, co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia on Monday. China called for immediate steps to implement the two-state solution to resolve the Palestinian issue. With the humanitarian crisis worsening in Gaza, China's envoy, Zhai Jun, stressed the urgent need for a comprehensive ceasefire to ease suffering and create conditions for peace. Zhai reaffirmed China's stance that Palestinians must govern both Gaza and the West Bank, and warned that altering Gaza's status or encroaching the West Bank could destabilize the region. He reiterated China's support for an independent Palestinian state, based on 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. China also called for a clear roadmap to achieve the two-state solution and pledged to work with the international community to address the crisis and promote lasting peace. Here is what the Chinese envoy had to say.
任何强制改变加沙地位、蚕食西岸土地的行径，都不会带来和平，只会引发新的动荡。 破坏两国方案的前景，中方坚决反对一切违反国际法、企图掏空两国方案的言行。
We're once again joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao to discuss this further. Dr. Nagao, what are your thoughts on this statement from the Chinese Foreign Ministry that it will work with the international community in resolving this issue, in implementing a two-state solution in such a complicated issue that's been going on for so many decades? What is your view on how China has been interacting with the international community and perhaps a new outlook for Beijing?
I think that this is not a suggestion to solve the issue in the Middle East. This is a suggestion related with the influence in the global South. Because why France suggests this two-state solution is admitting the state of the Palestine and try to push the two-state solution. Under current situation, this is indeed impossible to push indeed, because Israel's perception is if the two-state is established, another state, Palestinian state, is a group of the terrorists and potentially to attack the Israel anytime. So that's why there is no mood for the Israel side to accept the two-state solution just now. So in the long run, yes, two-state solution could be the solution, but just now, this is not a good timing. Despite this, France tried to say the two-state solution is a solution just now, because many countries in the world support this idea, and France is competing with other countries, influencing the global South. So if the France suggests this, of course the France will get the initiative to show their influence in the global south. But so view from China, what is happening is France takes the influence in the global south. This is not good for China. China should show their influence in the global south and get more influence in the global south. So that's why China need to say something. So that's why this is the situation. These great powers compete. The influence in the global south is my analysis, I think.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Satoru Nagao, for joining us on the program. Now we move over to the United States, where Donald Trump said on Tuesday that he severed ties with Jeffrey Epstein after the financier stole young women who worked at his Mar-a-Lago beach club spa. Speaking to reporters on Air Force One, Trump explained that once Epstein took staff members from the club, he ended their relationship. Trump confirmed that the women were young employees hired from the spa, including Virginia Giuffre, who was 16 at the time. Trump's comments come amid renewed pressure on Epstein's associates, including Ghislaine Maxwell, to testify about their involvement in Epstein's crimes. Maxwell, who is serving a 20-year prison sentence for aiding Epstein's abuse, has said that she will testify before Congress only if granted immunity or a pardon. Her legal team also requested that questions be provided in advance. The House committee subpoenaed Maxwell to testify on August the 11th, but Chairman James Cromer stated that granting immunity was unlikely. As the legal saga continues, Trump has also criticized media reports, including a Wall Street Journal article that linked him to Epstein, calling it fake and suing for defamation. Here is what the US president had to say.
By him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine, and then not too long after that, he did it again, and I said, out of here.
Now we're joined by Jim Rice, who's a professor of international law located in Vigan, the Philippines. Jim, thank you very much, as always, for joining us on the program. First of all, without speculation here, I want you to just comment on how the president has come across during this whole scandal. Since Donald Trump has denied to release the Epstein list, reports from various news outlets keep coming out about the US president. One including a letter in the Wall Street Journal, other video footage that shows the late sex offender at Donald Trump's second wedding. Now Donald Trump has no excuse but to talk about his relationship, which he clearly did have with Jeffrey Epstein. What are your thoughts on Trump's claims, particularly regarding his involvement with Epstein in the past?
Thomas, thanks for having me on. We're going through a severe tropical depression here, so if I cut out at any moment, please understand we're going through very difficult technical problems here. So anyway, to answer your excellent question, Trump has no excuse. I think that Trump has been caught in his own web of lies here, and he's been lying to the American populace for many, many years, and now it's caught up with him. He had promised to release this Epstein file because it was an article of faith among the MAGA faithful that there was some deep state conspiracy involving sex offenders, presumably Democrats, and now it turns out to be him. So it's very difficult to see how Trump is going to get out of this. But essentially what has happened is that Trump is now using the Justice Department, which is meant to be independent, meant to be law enforcement, as his own personal law firm. And the corruption is growing, it's deepening, and I just don't see a way out of this for Trump.
Yes, Jim Rice, thank you very much. You are joining us to give us more updates. Now we move over to the Indo-Pacific, where Shanghai is bracing for impact as Typhoon Komi barrels towards the city, bringing torrential rains and powerful winds, according to state media. Nearly 283,000 people have been evacuated from vulnerable areas to safety. The Shanghai Meteorological Observatory upgraded its alert level to orange, just one step below the highest, as conditions continued to worsen on Wednesday. Komi made its first landfall in eastern Zhejiang province at around 4:30 a.m. and is expected to hit Shanghai again by the evening. Live footage from coastal areas showed waves crashing over seaside walkways, while in Ningbo, people wading through ankle-deep water. Officials say the evacuation target has been basically achieved as the city prepares for the typhoon's full force. We're once again joined by Jim Rice. Jim, this typhoon has already made landfall near Beijing Shanghai, and is expected to reach Beijing by this evening. What can we expect in terms of the intensity of the storm once it hits the city?
Yeah, thanks for, this is really personal for me because, you know, we're living right here in a region that has been affected by Komi, and it was a terrible typhoon. And again, I can only, feel terrible for all of the people affected by it. But, each typhoon is different, and I've gone through many typhoons in my experience in the Philippines. But this particular storm has got a very, very long tail, which means that after the winds and the center of the typhoon go through, it is a very, very long period where you have very strong winds and just torrential rains that are devastating and cause an enormous amount of flooding, which it's done in the Philippines, and we're still being affected by it until now.
Yes, Jim, thank you very much. Very glad that you are safe. We now move on to some stories from the world of business. Tesla has struck a $4.3 billion deal with South Korea's LG Energy Solution to supply energy storage system batteries, according to the reports. The iron lithium phosphorate batteries will be produced at LG's Michigan plant. The move comes as Tesla aims to reduce its reliance on Chinese imports and ongoing US tariffs. The source said details of the agreement have not yet been officially made public. Adidas says a new US tariff will add on about $231 million to costs in the second half of 2025. The company confirmed the duties already hit second quarter results by tens of millions of euros. The US recently imposed tariffs on 20% on Vietnam and 19% on Indonesia. Adidas's two top sourcing countries, which together account for nearly half of its product output. Hyundai Motor Group Executive Chair A. Seung Chung is expected to head to Washington to support South Korea's bid for a fair trade deal with the US, according to local media reports. The trip comes amid an intensive push by top South Korean officials and industry giants like Samsung and Hanwha to reach a deal before the August 1st tariff deadline. Hyundai and affiliate Kia, the world's third largest car maker, face impact from new US tariffs on exports. Italy's Lamborghini reported a slight drop in operating income to 431 million euros in the first half of 2025, down from 458 million euros last year, despite record car deliveries. The luxury car maker blamed the decline on unfavorable currency exchange trends during the second quarter, which ate into its strong sales performance. China Evergrande Group faces delisting from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange next month after failing to restructure its $23 billion offshore debt and being ordered into liquidation. This comes amid a broader slump in China's property market, which has struggled to recover despite government efforts. The company missed the 18-month deadline to resume trading, making its removal from the exchange likely. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.